nuclear strict, disguised as clean. Painted bright for all to see.
It's the 29th. Hello, everybody.
A Trojan gift, dressed in a lie, a polished mask for what's alright. The future's here, they say it's bright, but hidden deep, it's not so light. They say it's bright, they say it's bright.
It's the 29th day of January 2025. I'll get it right in a minute. I'm Dana. And you can call into these live shows at 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. Blah. Pink hydrogen is not, that's what they call nuclear hydrogen, right? And James Lucid had done a music video, a song, and a video about pink hydrogen. It's a very important video. It always takes a few minutes for me to get up and running. I hope you're doing well today. We got a poll. Let's get after that for a second. Knowing Fukushima's deadly nuclear fallout covered the entire planet, is nuclear dirty and not clean energy? Nuclear is not. It's the most resource-intensive industry in human history. And so we appreciate everybody that votes on that poll. I'm almost there. We got the truck working good. I got the studs put in. It was a 4-hour and 40-minute ordeal. Minus 14 wind chill today. I think what the problem is, let's just cover that before I get into the show here. So I broke off 4 studs. And that's pictures from the day. So I got to take the caliper off. So I got the caliper half off. I can't get the caliper off, so I get the front half off. That gives me access, and you can see everything's, the bolts are sheared off right. Apparently that's not overly unusual, and so I was able to knock the old studs out, and you can see the broken bolts, and you can see the new studs, what they look like. Unfortunately, I didn't. I shot a video. I thought I shot a video of the finished job. It turns out I didn't. So what made this particularly dangerous was there was these 2 studs holding the tire on. So say if it was that stud there and that stud over there, then your tire can't do that, right? But where you're going to just have the top 2 studs in the same spot, basically. You go around a sharp turn and you can snap everything off. Especially if I had to took the highway, I would have crashed for sure. And it was a lot. You got to get the 2 front wheels off the ground. So it was a very long process. The 4 hours and 20. Just because I'm by myself, I got to make sure I'm safe. So everything is about being safe, right? That's why it takes a bit longer. So I have 2 jack stands underneath it. I have wood piled up to make sure that if it does go south on me, because it's minus 14 wind chill, each of the back wheels are double chalked. And it went pretty, once I got everything sorted out, it went pretty smooth. And so we're back on the road. And then the only way to get, I had to take the speed sensor off. I had to get that bolt out. You can see that's pretty corroded. I finally got that out. And then I was able to get the studs to go through. All right. So that's great news. I took it out for a good drive, and it's way better. So this has been bad for a little while. It was totally different. And so I'm assuming this was going on for a while. The problem, I didn't pick up on it. I don't know how, because I changed the brakes, changed the caliper, or changed the brakes and bled the brakes and the drums like 3 weeks ago or something. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I don't know. But anyway, We're right ahead of the snow. We got heavy snow coming in tonight. We're worried till we don't get a lot of snow. The idea is get the truck up and running in good condition so we can put the skidoo on the trailer to get out and do research. And if I'm going to go out in the woods, well, let's talk about that for 1 second. If I'm going to go out in the woods, in the middle of nowhere, I got to take a sleigh with me, right? I got to have a generator with me. I got to have a tent with me. I got to have my sleeping bag. I got to have food. I got to have water. I got to have fuel. I got to have emergency supplies in case I get stuck out there somewhere. So I got to pick up a sled. That's my project right now. Now that I got everything else done yesterday and today. Now I got to find a sled so that the snow is showing up tonight at midnight. Heavy winds. And over the next few days, we should get a good accumulation of snow. So we're looking forward to doing the research for the species due to Fukushima. Let's talk about the stories tonight. You can tell I'm a little bit frazzled. It's been a tough, yesterday and today was tough days. Got through it, and everything's good to go. I recover quick, but tomorrow I'll be recovered, so. So Sue sent me this story, geothermal energy. It's not that. It is that story, but the story is now starting to circulate. The same story, the same author, the same paragraphs, and she sent it to me a couple of days ago. And now I'm seeing it showing up in all kinds of stories, and you'll see some of that tonight. And I got pretty emotional there today about that. Because it means there could be a future. Because that's the direction we're supposed to head in. So, nuclear versus... geothermal versus fusion energy. Geothermal, you don't need a bunch of geeks and a bunch of traders. You don't need 5,000 scientists. You just build your geothermal plant and walk away. And you got 5, 10, 15 people doing maintenance. You don't need 5,000 people showing up every day and everybody making sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, because if something goes wrong, it's kabooey. Fusion is so stupid. It's clearly not for what they're claiming, right? It's not for unlimited clean. There's no such thing as clean energy when it comes to any kind of nuclear. We'll talk about that coming up, hopefully. I'll make it that far. I got to get started first, though, haven't I? Geothermal energy gains favor in Trump administration policies. Amidst this shift, geothermal energy emerges as a notable exception. Geothermal energy is gaining traction due to its ability to generate electricity consistently 24/7. No, geothermal energy is gaining traction because Trump administration has announced they're going to produce 90 gigawatts by 2050. But the reality of that statement, let me find that. And the reality of this statement is really interesting. Let me get to it here. Right there. The last sentence. The Energy Department project that advanced geothermal projects, could provide up to 90 gigawatts of power in the United States by 2050. Enough to power millions of homes. It's enough to power 90 million homes. They still can't help but downplay it, eh? And here's the reality. So, it looks like they're going to go ahead with this. And what you're going to see happening is the companies like Quatsi Electric, which is going to use an MIT application to melt rocks, to atomize and aerosol rocks, instead of drilling through it. It's going to be much quicker. And you can go much deeper. Which means you can tap into very high temperatures, which will make gas, oil, coal, nuclear plants obsolete. But also, there's another technology that harnesses pneumatic water jets at 25,000 pounds per square inch will slice through the hard rocks at 25,000 pounds per square inch of water jets, and then it will use pneumatic water-driven hammers to pulverize the remains of the rocks that have been sliced apart, and then the drill bit will go down to that. It's a very fast technique to do it. And so if you start mass producing it, what you're going to see is not 90 gigawatts of power in the United States by 2050, but 200 gigawatts in power by 2035. And because you're going to see this acceleration once they go hard at it, the technology, because it's only the last couple of miles they got to drill. They refuse to develop the technology themselves, and now other companies have developed it. So we're going to see an explosion worldwide of this technology. Right? Do you agree with that? And that's a big deal. And then the small modular reactor crackerheads, the scumbags, small modular reactor. The people that are promoting small modular reactors are strictly doing it to drive up stocks so they can cash in their cheap stocks when mom and pop, who worked all their life and invest in it, they can rob their investments. That's what they're doing. They do it every 2 or 3 weeks, right? We cover it. It's despicable. It's unbelievably despicable that they do stuff like that. And here's the Associated Press, which has around 1,600 medias use spider bots to aggregate whatever AP puts there. So this just went out to 1,600 medias immediately. They just regurgitate the exact pictures, paragraphs, stories. One renewable energy finds favor. So this is the very first time, and it's showing the same picture, this is the very first time that we've seen geothermal energy finally get the prominence that it deserves. And I wonder where did the change of heart come from? Because we advocated this strongly for many, many years, right? Because it's the reasonable and ethical and moral thing to be doing. Just give me a second. I kind of lost my spot there. It takes a second. Sometimes if I double click, like I might have 900 of these screen captures in my window pane, right? And I have 8 window panes on each side. And so if I double click, it could move this one right to the very bottom on me. And then I got to scroll all the way back up, which is not very hard because the operating system that I'm using is pretty it's pretty sophisticated. It can handle it. Geothermal experts. I didn't ever say who the experts are. All of a sudden now, geothermal makes sense because Trump says they're going to put administration says they're going to put 90 gigawatts in. So now everybody's like, wow, what the hell is geothermal? Like it didn't exist or something. I'm just happy that they're finally embracing it. But the media that is coming out, like this is AP, is disgusting. These people are disgusting, aren't they? It's a climate solution because it reduces the need for traditional power plants to burn fossil fuel and causes... Fossil fuel doesn't cause climate change. It's absurd to suggest that. Radioactive fallout causes... Like, fossil fuel emits carbon. Carbon... You can't have children or plants or puppies or trees or insects or animals or whales or birds or pandas or anything without carbon. Carbon's good. And carbon doesn't travel very far. It's very heavy. But radiation fallout covers the entire planet within about 3 to 4 weeks. It's the only emitter out there that does that. And the radioactive emissions will pulse energy every second for millions of years in most cases. So when you see this plume here, this is a plume of xenon-133 coating the continent of North America, the entire continent. And you're talking about when I say coating, that's what I mean. It's coating the earth, the trees, the houses, the forest, the meadows, everything, the farmers' fields, the children's playgrounds. And we don't have anything. There's not a species or a human or an insect or an animal or biota on this planet that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. It's the worst case scenario for a planet. If you wanted to really destroy a planet, you see if you find another planet in the solar system with similar to Earth and you bring a nuclear power plant there, eventually you'll wipe out every species just from the emissions from the fuel pools. Because the fuel pools are still hemorrhaging, are still splitting atoms, and there's no longer containment. And so think of an invisible snowstorm covering the entire planet, and instead of snowflakes, it's radiation, you can't see it, but each one of those atoms are pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. And cesium-137, for instance, pulses is 600 feet. This is madness. And we have an extinction event because it is now, because Fukushima was a pulse event that broke the back of the species on the planet, the 8 million species. So carbon is not 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, is it? Because radioactive fallout is. Think about that. Carbon. And think about carbon wouldn't cover 1,000 of the radioactive fallout from Fukushima you're looking at there after 20 days. That's 20 days of radioactive fallout. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't create plumes like this. This is plumes from a nuclear plant breaking down, basically. And let's put it in that context if you're not familiar with the subject. So you got a plume covers the entire planet, pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. How can carbon compete with something like that? And like again, carbon emissions from a power plant are not 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, are they? Carbon is not like explosions going off in your cells, or is it? Carbon is not blowing holes in your DNA, is it? Not only that, but when you get carbon in your body, it's not pulsing energy every second and giving you an exposure of a factor of 1 trillion. Radiation is the only thing with those particular attributes. And I'm disgusted with everybody in the so-called disgusting media, the pathetic, revolting, despicable media. They're despicable. They're the worst humans conceivable. They're the most worthless people conceivable. They lie in every single story. Carbon doesn't have any of these attributes. Carbon, you get more plants, more flowers, more trees, more insects, more puppies, more food. And geothermal creates electricity cleanly by making steam from the Earth's natural heat. Like they knew this hundreds of years ago. Why is it today that the media is finally coming out and acknowledging it? How can we ever trust these creatures that calls themselves media and journalists? How can you ever trust these people again? How does that actually work? How can you forget the horror that they put this planet through? How does that work? Because I can tell you something right now, I don't, and I won't ever forgive them or forget what they got done to us. It's unconscionable that they think of themselves as humans. I find repulsive on top of that. It's a climate solution because it reduces the need for traditional power plants. Nuclear power plants need 2 gas, oil, coal plants dedicated to it to run it. Each reactor needs 4,500 tons of water, 1 million gallons a minute. That's equal to 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks driving past your house every minute, every 60 seconds. You got any idea how much energy it takes to do that in 1,440 minutes each day? And where does that energy come from? The nuclear power plant can't run on its own energy. It runs on external gas, oil, or coal. Typically coal plants because they're cheaper. The entire industry is disgusting. And the people that participate in it are perpetual liars on purpose. You went to university, get an education, come out and lie to you. It's absurd. It's absurd that we're in 2025 and these people are still able to get away with stuff like this. Rain with 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131 per liter fell on the United States during its post-Fukushima peak. When a coal plant breaks down, you don't see headlines, cold carbon fell on your community. You can't eat your food ever again. Carbon fell in your water supplies. You can never drink it again. You don't see headlines that. I think everybody that says carbon is causing climate change should be kept in a dungeon in a jail for the rest of their lives. They know better. These are journalists. They're not stupid. They're doing it to destroy everybody's future so they can pretend to their friends or families they're important. They're not people. They don't have any of those attributes. If a coal plant breaks down, you see headlines like carbon emissions are killing babies in Philadelphia. The deaths are up 48% since carbon spiked in the tap water. You won't see a headline like that, will you? But is iodine-131 killing babies in Philadelphia? It's more likely was the curium isotopes, which are the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod and not going away for at least 250,000 years. And need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium does. Like, I can't control my contempt for the media at all. I can't understand how anybody can look at them and not spit on them the minute you see them. I don't understand that. I can't comprehend that. I can't rationalize it. They're destroying everything and everybody and every species. For what? So they can call themselves a journalist. The West Coast was hit with 220 million atoms per liter. These are catastrophic numbers. You won't see a coal plant breaks down and kills the species, emaciates tens of thousands of whales, and you see millions of emaciated birds because coal produced carbon. You're not going to see that. We are way too tolerant. You're way too tolerant of the mainstream media. You're incredibly tolerant. Is the world going nuclear? The hope and hype of a nuclear as a climate solution. Sure, how can it be a climate solution? How does that work? You demonize carbon and claim that nuclear is somehow the solution when nuclear is the actual problem. If you look at the adverse weather conditions like supercell typhoons, supercell cyclones, supercell hurricanes, what you're going to look at is pre-Fukushima, you've barely seen it. Post-Fukushima, you see cyclones, hurricanes, and typhoons landing on shore at over 200 miles per hour. And we don't have infrastructure anywhere on the planet because that's not normal winds, right? And we see much higher winds than that. There was one storm in China where it blew down 500 million trees. 500 million trees. This was just one area. 500 million trees. We've seen a storm come ashore in the Philippines. Was at 255 miles per hour winds. And they interviewed the people after, and they were asking people, are they going to rebuild? And they said, why would we rebuild when we're going to get storms like this? What was the point of it? We've never seen storms like this. And what they should have been saying is we've never seen storms like this pre-Fukushima. So it was a pulse event of 36 reactors. There was 8 fuel pools with around 4 reactor cores in each fuel pool that melted down. It's been a difficult few decades for nuclear power. Nuclear's never been... Its entire existence is predicated upon deceit, deception, misrepresentation, and what is anybody on the planet would normally call lies and propaganda. Nuclear share as part of the global energy mix has been falling. And incidents like Fukushima disaster in 2011 highlighted for many, instead of everybody, the pro-nuclear won't acknowledge there's risk. The average pro-nuclear media will not acknowledge that people can get sick or injured or die from radiation. That's how disciplined they are in being evil. Because it's evil. I think to call yourself a legacy media is evil. To be connected with ABC or BBC or CBS or CBC or whatever the mainstream so-called media is worldwide means you're the evilest person conceivable, and that's why you got the job. That the skeletons in your closets must be hideous. Oh, excuse me. It's just... I apologize because it just drives me nuts. I just don't understand how we can have a future when the media is doing this to everybody. I can't comprehend how we're supposed to have a future. And the nuclear industry it's going, like, there's less reactors coming online every year than goes offline. So they're going backwards every year. There's no small modular reactors. They've been at it for 80 years. They haven't got a small modular reactors. So guess what? They're not likely to have it. But yet they're promoting the small modular. A lot of the small modular reactor companies are on the stock exchanges. And people are buying shares because they don't understand it's a Ponzi scheme. And that the regulators for the stock markets are part of the problem because they're not holding them accountable. They even allowing them on the stock market is absurd. So let's say I'm gonna start a company up and says I'm gonna build a spaceship that will fly us to a planet where there's humans like us. And I don't got to prove anything. I get up on the stock market and everybody buys shares. This is the same thing as small modular reactors. They don't exist. They got no evidence it will exist. They got 80 years showing that it doesn't exist, which means it's highly unlikely. They're not even trying. They don't have land. They're not trying to build it. They're not raising the capital. They don't have the supply networks. They don't have the manpower. There's nobody in the nuclear industry whatsoever. There's not a single person in the nuclear industry that the world says, hey, look, that, they're pretty cool. Instead, they give you the most wicked, evilest people like Gates, right, or Sam Altman, or a billionaire, right, and put them as their front man, so to speak. That's how pathetic this industry actually is. And they got $1 billion budget every year for public relation firms to try to destroy people like me or you. And those people love their jobs. Easy money to go destroy someone's life. And the future of humanity many times. Some countries started mothballing or shutting down nuclear power plants, and many nuclear power plant projects were plagued by cost blowouts and delay. Every one of them are plagued by cost delays and blowouts. Every one of them. There's never one that in history came in on budget or even close to the time frame. I used to always sneeze in doubles, eh? Now I sneeze in one. When I'm in the studio, I sneeze only once typically. Tonight I might make a liar to myself, but in the past few years, there's been a remarkable turnaround. Past few years, since Sprouts Physical Trust bought up the raw uranium, the yellow cake. And that artificially created a demand for the mining companies, which rose the shares up gradually over a couple of years. Right? It was manufactured consent. There was no demand. Reactors are lesser coming online every year than goes offline each year. Last year alone, there was 660 gigawatts in a 12-month period of solar power came online. It's equal to 700 large nuclear reactors. But why would you do solar or anything else when you can do geothermal and use solar, wind, and storage for backup? But you don't need anything when you get geothermal. And geothermal can run off its own energy on top of that. Nuclear is so stupid. And now they're drowning, so they're going to try to take the whole planet with them. Countries are pledging to help trickle. That's about the reality of it, isn't it? Trickle the production of nuclear power globally. Look, just because they're pledging, they need to be building reactors like mad because it takes so long for them to come to fruition. They need to create, and every time they build a reactor, you're chewing up the majority of the precious resources on the planet, because every reactor needs the best of the best metals, the best materials, the best this, the best that. Everything is triply inspected. They don't have that supply network. Because when you take the military-industrial complexes worldwide, they need those same particular attributes. They need the best of the best. To be the evilest person they can be, the evilest organization they can be, they need the best of the best. Just like this Conference of Parties 29 last year, they pledged that they were going to triple nuclear, but we don't see that happening. We don't see that any signs or symbols of it whatsoever. We see a disgusting industry that is well on its way to exterminating all the species and us. That's all we see. Just through the radioactive emissions from the fuel pools and the radioactive fallout from the legacy of decades of dumping. And the International Atomic Energy Agency, who don't have the authority to hold anybody accountable. They don't have sovereignty over any country. Japan, for instance, is their third biggest donor. They don't survive without donations. They can't exist without donations. And donations for them, a lot of the money, 90% of the money goes to administration, which is typical of nuclear too, by the way. 90% of the money goes to administration. In other words, it's siphoned off at the top. And legacy and history now has clearly demonstrated, unequivocally, that these are disgusting parasites. These are industries of nothing, and I mean nothing but parasites. A United Nations body that advocates for peaceful use of nuclear technology. Like, the emissions from the fuel pools are not peaceful. They're catastrophic to everything with replicating cells worldwide. The plumes from 1,000 fuel pools covers the entire planet each. It's so insidious, it doesn't seem real, I'm sure. It's 100% real, though. It's the threat to the future of humanity and the species. And now it has compromised the future of humanity and the species. And now it's willing to cannibalize all the investors who worked like a dog all their life to be able to invest in and raise some money for their retirement. Instead, this industry, the small modular reactors, is looting their pensions, looting their investments through a Ponzi scheme known as small modular reactors. It's terrifying, but these are cowards. They can only exist with the complicity of the schools of mass destruction you call universities for some reason, and your horrific, horrifying creature known as a media, as a journalist, the worst of the worst humans on the planet. They're forecasting substantial growth in the sector over the coming decades. The International Atomic Energy Agency, who says Fukushima didn't even melt down. Yeah, those people. Like, I'm going to show you this picture. I show it every show. I made the picture over a decade ago. This is 4 different medias pretending they're at the top of Fukushima Reactor 4 to your left, which officially they're saying doesn't look like that and never melted down. The International Atomic Energy Agency, on August the 24th, 2023, said that Fukushima didn't melt down. Right? And that was regurgitated by the parasitic media worldwide, by the gutless journalists worldwide. That's 4 major medias claiming they're at the top of a building that doesn't exist, which is nuclear meltdown. And they refuse to acknowledge it melted down. Do you know why they're doing that? Because Fukushima is an extinction event. It's a pulse event that has now set us on a trend towards extinction. Hi everybody, hugs for everybody. Hope everybody's doing good. Yeah, James Lucid just nailed it. Make Yellowstones off limit to the public. Only allow wildlife and geothermal. And I mean, you're up and running. You got any idea, folks, how much energy you can produce from that single spot? And because of Nikola Tesla, we can transport the energy right across the country, right? Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm good. I'm just burnt out. I'm still doing fine. Don't get me wrong. The truck is working perfect. Better than it has in a long time, actually. So, that's a huge win, right? We got snow, heavy snow coming in an hour or so. I'm hoping tomorrow I'm going to have a video of the Skidoo. I got to get the Skidoo out for a couple of test runs locally, right, before I take it out in the middle of nowhere to look for species, because Fukushima's exterminated everything. So we got to go out and prove. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully there's all kinds of species. But with all the research we've done over the years, we know that's simply not true. So we got to get out and do field studies. Look for tracks, look for any signs of species, and do that for the next number of months, right? That's what we're waiting on. And we're going to have a big dump tonight, but over the next, between now and Saturday, is going to be around 36 centimeters of snow. But because you're going to get heavy winds, and because you got freezing temperatures, it was so cold out there today, and it started snowing. We had a lot of rain last night, right out of the blue. It went from just double digits below zero to 0 degrees, basically, and it rained all night. And then this morning, everything was a sheet of ice, and then it started snowing again. Temperatures dropped back down. But that's a good foundation. Now you got frost in the earth, so now the snow is going to stay, right? I got tarps on the trailers so that I can get the snow off it. I'm thinking this year. I'm getting ahead of things this year. But I got to buy a sled. And I'm not going to get a piece of shit, because that's just going to end up getting me stuck in the woods somewhere. So I got to get something sensible. And I got one I'm trying to contact. Hopefully I can get hold of them tomorrow. And get that and get a survival kit put together. And so I can get out in the woods and start doing research. But I'm not going to go out in the woods with a single sled because that's a death sentence if I break down, right? I'm not expecting to. That's a really good Skidoo I got. It's a 4-stroke, fuel injected, liquid cooled, 2,350 kilometers on it. And I got spare engines, spare throttle bodies, spare start motors. I got all kinds of spare stuff. I got the wiring harnesses. I got all kinds. The track's really good. It's got carbide tips in the tracks. Studs, rather. Australia's about to head into a federal election with adoption of nuclear power because we kind of... Sometimes I'll do rambling. I apologize for that for people who are not aware of what's going on. We do a lot of research, and it takes sometimes a long time to put these operations together. And so there's a lot of prep work goes into everything, and can't do nothing without the truck up and running. And now that the truck was running so good this evening when I took it out. And the reason I took it out for a nice ride was because my brain didn't accept that it was fixed, right? And so they had to go out and drive around, so my brain goes, it's fixed, Dana. And so now I got that out of the way. I'm excited now to get out and do some research. And I picked up a real winter's jacket. The first one I've had in 35 or 40 years. Because out in BC I didn't need it, right? But down here it's minus 20 odd. And so I got one rated for the coldest temperatures we can get. It's lots of pockets. It's a nice jacket. It's a very durable jacket. Really good zippers. And that's a big deal. That's comfort, right? And I must admit, I don't know if sometimes I feel I shouldn't talk about stuff like that, but the new pillows, feathered pillows, and the new sheets and pillowcases and everything. I'm sleeping like a baby. My left arm is coming along amazing. No discomfort when I'm sleeping. How interesting is that, eh? That it would have those particular attributes. Because the other pillows was brutal. Because I hurt myself about 7 weeks ago or something. I took a fall. And my back is coming along really good. But my left elbow still... And now the last couple of days... it's still there. I got to be careful, but it's not miserable. So it's such a relief to be free of that kind of pain. I had a tendency to work through it, but it was hurting pretty rough there last week. And so that was a pretty good move to do that one. My goodness, what a difference that made for my health. At the center of the political contest, this is Australia. I just got to move to the next story because we kind of lost the context, right? Apologize to everybody. Got lost in translation. Once in a while, I'll start rambling. Is the world going nuclear? The hope and hype of nuclear as a climate solution. Tom Lowrey. What a disgusting maggot that person is. What a despicable parasite. What a hateful creature he turned out to be. What a miserable, traitorous scumbag he turned out to be. This is another guy right there. Let me see. They're talking about conference of parties. And David Gillespie has been one of the nuclear power's longest and loudest supporters, chairing the Parliamentary Friends of the Nuclear Industry. Parliamentary Friends of the Nuclear Industry. This is a government entity that calls themselves the Friends of the Nuclear Industry. Australia, like Britain, has the most gobblish, the most wicked, subhuman species of academics you'll ever come across. And Canada, of course. Canada is much like Australia. It's worse, though, right? Because we actually got a lot of nuclear reactors. And he said he took the message he took from the Climate Summit, which was Conference of Parties, also known as Constipated Parties, 29 last year. the disgusting UN, the traitorous UN, the usurpians UN. You build a fleet of power plants, nuclear power plants. You don't tip your toes around the edges, he said. You do what France and Canada and the Americans did in 80. You build a lot of nuclear power plants. Like, first off, the British, the recent British Hinkley Point, is going to be around 57 billion. 57 billion. The current estimates, we know it's going to be way worse than that. You're not going to build a fleet of these. And as soon as you take the fuel out of the reactor core and put it in the fuel pool at these sites, you're going to contaminate everything within 1,000 miles with radioactive fallout 24 hours a day. And to suggest that it's clean, it's the same song and dance, right? Over and over and over. But the reality of it is, these people are not human. They just don't care about anything. They're just soulless bags of flesh that are servants and slaves to the nuclear industry. That's all they are. I mean, these must have been the chicken necks of the chicken necks in your schools. He said the arrival of nuclear energy on the climate scene has certainly been noticeable. He said, when I was at the 2018 climate summit in Poland, there was something of a fuss and surprise when a person in a giant inflatable polar bear costume burst in the cafeteria. That was orchestrated by Michael Schellenberg. It was him and a number of people for about 2 decades were the biggest nuclear promoters on the planet. He's still out there, but he's up to more no good. Accompanied by a pro-nuclear youth, and an opera singer singing pro-nuclear songs. Burst into a cafeteria. So why would that get prominence? Lots of people doing stunts. It was because it was Michael Schellenberg's operation. He's wrote lots of anti-nuclear or pro-nuclear books, denying any. For 20 years, he denied there was any harm capable of coming from a nuclear fuel or nuclear plants. I don't understand how somebody can think that way, or not think that way, but try to encourage people to think that way. Mr. Reid said the nuclear advocates were hosting events on the sidelines. They were sensitive to one criticism in particular. They're all conscious. They have to show that they can deliver new projects on time and on budget. I must have heard that phrase 50 times from the nuclear people. 50 times. So this is a little fraction of Hinkley Point. This is just a fraction of the site. It's hard to appreciate how big, massive this site is. And it's even probably more harder to appreciate how much energy it takes just to keep all the light bulbs on, let alone all the welders and everything else. You need 2 permanently dedicated to this one site, gas, oil, or coal plants. To build it for 15 or 20 years, to run it for whatever its lifespan is, and for 30 or 40 years to try to decommission it. Dedicated to it. And then to suggest that they're not burning any fossil fuel. They're the biggest burners of fossil fuel. And all the material there is the highest grade material, which means you're using the most resources possible to create that stuff. See, because when they tell you these stories where it's has this particular attribute, that particular attribute, they don't show you the pictures. They don't explain to you why they're making that assertion. Because they can't. They can't justify it. The International Atomic Energy Agency is forecasting a big... Of course they are. They promote nuclear. You can't promote nuclear and not have a forecast of expansion, right? They expect this and they're hoping for that. And these are conjectures and opinions. These are not facts. There's no supply chain out there to quantify the assertions. It took the world a very long time to deploy its first total terawatt of solar energy production. We're now doubling every couple of years. Now you're doubling it every year. And for, this is solar. Just for solar, there was 660 gigawatts last year, which is over 700 large nuclear power plants coming online in 1 year. Which is double the amount of nuclear plants on the entire planet came online in just 12 months with solar. And they expect it to grow by 40% a year, which is a massive amount. But it actually is restricted because of the artificial inflation and the high prices of the commodities created by the false flag so-called war in Ukraine and Russia. That was a staged event. That was meant to cause inflation worldwide and to drive up the price of commodities worldwide, so only nuclear looked competitive, among other things, obviously, right? But that was a high priority. This is exactly what happened. And you know the thing with inflation, it'll never go backwards. The Australian Conservation Foundation, David Sweeney, who refuses to acknowledge Fukushima Reactor 4 melted down, conveniently, who refuses to acknowledge Fukushima had massive releases, conveniently, that David Sweeney was at the Conference of Parties, the Constipated Parties 29 conference in Baku, and cast some doubts on nuclear future, at least compared to renewables. The whole bloody thing is just, when it comes to nuclear, you won't find a single person that's not 100% corrupted. Let's go back to poll for 1 second here. How come I only got 18 likes? How come I only got 19 votes? What's wrong with this world? If I was wrapping shit on the stick, I'd have 30,000 likes right now, wouldn't I? I'd call it fertilizer then, see? Everybody yucking it up. I have 1 million comments by now. Knowing Fukushima deadly nuclear fallout covered the entire planet is nuclear dirty, not clean energy. And radioactive fallout pulses energy at the speed of light every second. It covers the entire planet. And every fuel pool on the planet is doing that. There's over 1,000 fuel pools. But Fukushima was a pulse event, right? Fukushima was a pulse event. I'm a bit stuffed up here tonight. My apologies to everybody. I'm sure I'll feel better by tomorrow, right? It's just a couple of rough days of... it's just rough on your hands and rough on your body and your knees and that. I got really good knee pads, right? I got them on sale for like $70, the knee pads. They're great big knee pads, right? They're rocks. They're molded too, and they're really comfortable. Eh? You're not gonna do any damage with those guys, huh? And I'm after putting them. I haven't got them destroyed, but they're. I should take a picture tomorrow or the next day for you, so you can actually see how. They're great knee pads, but I mean. I'm after giving them quite a lot of use. Let's put it. I always use them, right? And so, and I try to be careful with them. I always got like a tarp underneath me or a piece of rubber or something like that. But as anybody that's working all the time, fixing things outdoors, you know how rough it can get. African activists rally against nuclear energy in Ghana. And bless their hearts, we love them. We absolutely love these people for doing, at least trying, right? And they got the moral high ground. You're doing the right things, folks. The world will appreciate you for doing this eventually. It comes at a time when Ghana had been actively considering nuclear energy. Everybody's considered nuclear because the nuclear industry pesters everybody like literally like a plague. Particularly following the 2015 Memorandum of Understanding with the Russian nuclear giants Rosatom, which recently proposed to build small modular reactors in the country. Well, they can't build them in the country because they don't have them. They don't have them. This was an interesting story. Sweden opened a 160-year bunker will store a dangerous energy source. What the hell is the point of showing us that picture right there? I wonder. What the hell has that got to do with this? Sweden has made a bold and historic move. A bold move. The problem with the fuel is it's splitting atoms into the environment, killing everything. And most of these places are surrounded by farms. So the food is sucking up the radiation, and people are getting poisoned when they eat from the supermarkets. The cutting-edge facility, which is close to Forsmark, is built to safely retain radioactive waste for 100,000 years, guaranteeing the safety of future generations. No, you already destroyed the future generations with perpetual emissions and dumping. There is no future generation. And like the people that write these stories, there's never been a greater pressing need for efficient waste management as nuclear energy continues to drive contemporary society. Like, what are you talking about? Like, typically most of these stories, by the way, are written by the International Atomic Energy Agency. They're given to these chicken neck medias, and one of their so-called journalists, which is the left, call them journalists, will put their name on it. That's how they keep their job, by being extra evil. Since commercial reactors started operating in the 50s, the nuclear industry struggled with the issue of how to keep lethal radioactive waste until it's safe to handle. Like when they use the word safe to handle, what are they talking about? No one's going to go in there in a million years and try to handle it, okay? Instead of saying for a million years until it's no longer lethal to everything with replicating cells, they say until it's safe to handle. So you got to be the lowest form of life. You really got to be in the industry, part of the International Atomic Energy Agency and the non-regulatory commissions and stuff like that, in order to frame the narratives the way they're doing it. So when you see the narratives framed like that, it's emblematic that it's not written by a chicken neck journalist. It's written by a pro scumbag from the nuclear industry. To keep lethal radioactive waste until it's safe to handle. It's never going to be safe to handle. There won't be anybody left on the planet when it's safe to handle, because the radioactive emissions from 1,000 fuel pools will already have exterminated every fucking species. Every one of us. It will be exterminated in the near future because of what they got done to us now, particularly Fukushima. The plant uses bentonite clay. Like, what are you talking about? When the reactor is when you leave the fuel alone, it melts down eventually. Might be right away, but eventually it'll melt down. It'll burn at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. The bentonite clay is not going to protect you. It's not going to contain it. You can put it in a titanium. It'll just melt right through it like it's butter. Sophisticated copper canisters. And I really disrespect that one. So they were going to put, I think it's a 1 millimeter, 1/10 of a centimeter copper coating on. They said that'll stop it from deteriorating for 1 million years. Like, if you put copper in the ground, because copper is very conductive to electricity. So if you put it with a bunch of other minerals, there's actually an electrical charge there. And it'll cause it to decay. The copper will actually decay. But radioactive fuel has a particular attribute known as the Wigner effect, which is the gamma shines, the X-rays, the neutron bombardments, the beta rays, the alpha shines. And that will break down the integrity of anything. There is nothing you can make that won't break down on the atomic scale, the integrity of that metal. So if you got a really thick piece of I-beams, like the I-beams you use for skyscrapers, It's huge stuff, right? If you put that in an area that's being bombarded by neutrons for a decade or two, you can walk up to that with a 8-pound maul, and you hit that, it might crumble like clay. Because neutron bombardments, not to mention the beta rays, the alpha shines, the gammas, the X-rays, everything else, will break down the absolute integrity of it. It's an industry that anybody in their right mind will fight tooth and nails against once they appreciate the absolute horror of it. And if I was in a position to litigate these journalists, I would litigate every single one of these journalists, and I would go to the local prosecutors in their country and try to have them taken down through the racketeering statutes. Because what this is a gang, right, and a cult. But this is a gang mentality to suggest, to continuously tell the same lies. They're all telling the same lies. These are easy to prove lies. These are not difficult. You can quantify that these are lies quite easily. And they have no defense. In court, they have no way of winning a case against them, because it's propaganda and it's lies, and it's absolutely unconscionable that somebody would go to university to get a job to come out and tell you lies. It's just, for the average person, it's really hard to appreciate that, to comprehend that that's actually how the world works. And it's a big industry. It's a massive industry to go to university, get an education, to come out and to get a job, to come out and tell people lies, claiming that radiation is like a banana or a potato chip or walking in the sunshine or flying on an airplane. And these are the public, your medias will go interview these experts. They're the ones. That's the ones that are going to cut your throat on the drop of a hat. And they revel in it. They absolutely love their job. And they're treated very good. They make a lot of money. They're treated like superstars. They're jet setted all over the countries to tell the lies. And then most of these are professors at universities, and they also work in the hospitals, irradiating usually children. They have a fiction for irradiating children and killing them with radiation for some reason. These are sadistic monsters. That's, if you were asked to sum up the psychology of a pro-nuclear in the media or the governments or the corporations, these are serial killers of the worst type. They don't have the conscience of a fly. They are weapons of destruction. That's what these people are. They revel in it. They went to university. They're incredibly smart people. They go to university, get incredible educations and degrees, to get a job, to come out and lie to you. And they could have got a better job, doing something good, made a lot more money, but they chose the evilest job because that's what their personalities are. And the industry is always in the universities looking for them. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Pol Pot move in the near future, where governments just get rid of all the pro-nuclear degenerates that have destroyed the future of humanity. Just round them up and get rid of them. You're not going to have a future. Might as well make sure they don't either. Here we go. Sophisticated copper canisters to safely hold spent fuel. So this was a Canadian confidence in copper coating nuclear engineering. A research review by the Canadian Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which had $26 billion for 22 years, didn't grow a cent of interest, by the way, and at least 20 more years before they're hoping to put anything underground in their hole in the ground solution. So these are the two academics, the two sacks of shit, the traitorous monsters from Canada. They found that copper coating undergoes little corrosion. You're talking about fuel from a reactor with the Wigner effect, the neutron bombardment. Not about corrosion, but copper is the worst one for corrosion. These are two, they look like humans, but they're the furthest thing from a human. It's finally confirmed that the copper coating on a Nuclear Waste Management Organization's design container for used nuclear fuel is robust and thick enough to withstand any corrosive effect for over 1 million years. You're going to put something in the ground and it looks like this, and a very thin coating. It's 0.25 millimeters. So it's not even a millimeter. It's a quarter of a millimeter. A quarter of a millimeter. It's probably equal to 3 sheets of paper, right? Thickness. And copper, of all things. And copper, of course, is great for electricity, right? And so when you put any other kinds of metal alongside of it, you create electrical charge that within a few years will cause heavy pitting in that material. When you put it, and what is nuclear? Nuclear is one constant electrical charge of neutrons and beta rays and X-rays and gamma shines and alphas. This is electrical discharges that are 0.25 of a millimeter, 0.25, a quarter of a millimeter. Like absurd. And look at him, trying to look cool. Actually thinks that they're human for some reason. This industry has no checks and balances, safeguarding both humans and the environment. First off, you release so much into the environment for so long, we have no future. You've destroyed everybody's future. And you can't contain the fuel. And they even acknowledge it here. Wait, let me show you. According to the degenerate World Nuclear Associations, the majority of the fuel is kept in cooling ponds. The majority is kept in cooling ponds. And cooling, by the way, you know what a pond is, do you? Look up the word pond. It's a small, still land-based body of water with very abundance of aquatic plants and animals, like aquatic life, algae, snails, fish, beetles, water bugs, frogs, turtles. So when they call the fuel storage facility, that's a special type of water, right? A borated water. And they call that a pond. That's meant to lull you into complacency. It's a total misrepresentation of every facet of their representation of what it is. The majority kept in cooling pools. And so the cooling, once you take the fuel out of the reactor, it's still splitting atoms for 1 million homes and businesses, but there's no containment. So when you put it in the water, the fuel pool is going to boil off, because that's how it produces energy for 1 million homes and businesses. But it's going to boil off about 100. It's not under pressure anymore. It's not under 1,000 psi anymore. But it's still producing the same atoms. Those atoms are in water, right? And so the water boils off about 120,000 liters out of each pool. And there's 1,000 pools doing it every day. And so every liter is hundreds of trillions of the worst atoms and trillions of other atoms, all man-made. And there's nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against the man-made. And almost every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms, as far as you can see. And we need to deal with that. This is not a friggin' game. We're in real trouble We got these disease factories worldwide. And that's what a cooling pool pond, like calling these a pond is just grammar meant to lull you into complacency, because subconsciously you associate the word pond with maybe a childhood experience where you would go trouting or swimming, or as a teen you might be out by the pond at night time with your friends and hanging out. It has good connotations, right? But these are not ponds. These are disease factories. These are hemorrhaging radiation that are destroying your grandparents and your parents and your friends and your families and your loved ones, your communities, your pets, and all the species, and everything that's good. That's all this stuff does. It destroys everything. There's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. And I find it offensive. And legally, it's constitutionally offensive. And here's what a pond. This is the ponds at Fukushima, hemorrhaging radiation, and this is based on 16 days when the model stops. This is the French government's model, backed up by studies of 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. A pond doesn't poison the entire fucking planet in 16 days. Okay, that's not what a pond does. Every one of these people should be fucking drowned in a pond. According to the World Nuclear Association, that's too nice for them to drown them in a pond. Cooling pond close to the reactors. Every time I hear the word pond, I despise this industry again. They use grammar as a weapon to destroy everybody's future. Could nuclear dependency be, and what's this, a pains of conscience? At the end of the story, there's pains of conscience. So the original story was written by the public relation firms from the International Atomic Energy Agency. But the editor of this particular site that published that particular story must have pains of conscience, because at the end of it they put this here. Could nuclear dependency be reduced by geothermal energy? Wow. This is something we could consider. Why didn't you put the word should? Perhaps it's a good idea to have energy options that are considered safer than nuclear. Name something out there that's not safer than nuclear. And close to the permanency as well. Geothermal energy from the core of the Earth. No, you don't need to go all the way to the core of the Earth. You just got to go down a couple of miles. From natural elements such as volcanoes can play a vital role in the energy sector and reduce or replace nuclear, because nuclear could work, but it has a lot of safety insecurities. Nuclear could work. It can never work. It's the worst option ever. And it's a plague now to everything with replicating cells. We're in so much trouble. Because radioactive fallout that blanket the entire planet. So when you look at the statistics, pre-Fukushima and post-Fukushima, within a couple of years of Fukushima, what you seen was, you were able to statistically show, was a massive, absurd amount of heart problems, heart attacks, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia, to name a few, has exploded post-Fukushima. Not pre-Fukushima, but post-Fukushima. Supercell cyclones, supercell typhoons, supercell hurricanes have exploded post-Fukushima, not pre-Fukushima. The mass die-off of all species has exploded post-Fukushima, not pre-Fukushima. And the curve in the species started immediately during the nuclear testing. And just after nuclear testing, that's when we've seen cancer epidemics worldwide explode. Quite a coincidence, isn't it? And so sometimes I'm a bit cynical. And I apologize maybe, but because I'm a very honest. My biggest problem is I'm a very honest person. That's a problem because I don't know how to sugarcoat things, right? I've been told this a lot over the years. I don't have much. I don't know. I think that I do it because I respect people. I think people can handle the truth, and we don't give people credit. And I don't judge somebody by their education, or their monetary, or their pedigree or anything like that whatsoever. I don't do that. I've never done that. And I don't judge people by their height or by their color or by their weight. I don't do it. Right? Because you know when you meet a nice person that they're a nice person. Period. Right? And everybody deserves to have that opportunity to be judged by merit, right? When it comes to the nuclear industry, we can't find merit. It doesn't exist. It's not part of the genetic makeup of the pro-nuclear community at all. Merit to them is how evil are they. And that's the tool they use for advancement in the industry. And look what I've done here. Look how evil I was there. Look how scumbaggery I was over there, where we dump fuel in the river or in the estuaries or in the communities or in the playgrounds. That's how they boast. Pink Hydrogen. I got that song. Is on my brain. That one is in my head big time. And I only got a little tiny fraction of James Lewis's songs in my playlist, just the anti-nuclear music. It's just a little fraction, but you got to listen to the whole songs because they're telling you stories too, right? It's poetry, really, in many ways. Put the music in video. And it tells you a story about that subject. It's a really clever combination. That's just, when the world finally wakes up to it, it's going to be quite interesting. Because it works, right? Music is a wonderful tool, but it's the best weapon on the planet. You know that. UK to bury world's largest plutonium stockpile. UK are nuts. United Kingdom, they're actually nuts. And look how many invaders now they brought into their country. Why would you do that? This is Geraldine Thomas. Jerry Thomas. It's Geraldine, Dr. Geraldine Thomas. She's wanted for crimes against humanity and genocide. She's last seen killing children with chemo and radiation. And the description is a monster who kills children for the nuclear industry with nuclear waste. And the reward if found is a Nobel Peace Prize. And she's one of the most insidious creatures you'll ever come across. She's a professor on top of that, which is terrifying.
So, for example, coming here, I would have got a dose of 0.07 millisieverts on the flight. And I actually went round Fukushima Daiichi on Wednesday, and the dose that I had going around the site, so very close to where the reactors are, it was 0.01 and probably lower, but that's the lowest it could actually read. So I got more of a dose flying here, and we'll get a dose tomorrow when I fly home, than I would have done from being in Fukushima.
She's an actual monster, right? And she was talking about Fukushima. She got more radiation flying on the airplane than she did from going around the nuclear meltdowns. First off, it's zero possibility she went around the nuclear meltdowns. It's zero possibility. Because the reactors actually blew up. And she's not stupid. She's just evil. Right? The reactors, that means you never... Academics, when they see that, there's like, you couldn't drag them to Fukushima. They will claw the eyes right out of your head. Sellafield, which is 1,000 radioactive buildings and a nuclear wasteland, surrounded by farms as far as you can see, even by satellite, is home to the largest plutonium storage facility on Earth, which has also housed nuclear waste accumulated during the development of nuclear weapons, as well as waste imported from abroad. So they took waste in from other countries and turned it into plutonium mixed oxide fuel. That's levels and levels and levels above any kind of evil you'll see in a jail cell on this entire planet. That's such an insidious and monstrous thing to do, is the plutonium mixed oxide fuel. That whole process, what they used to do there was pump the emissions down into the soil. But that ended up in the water tables and it blew up in their faces, right? You can't contain it. So Sellafield, which is a fuel reprocessing facility in the United Kingdom, so-called Great Britain, and La Hague in France, and Donerae in Scotland, which is still owned by United Kingdoms, are credited in many, many, many academic studies with polluting the Arctic with radioactive fallout and Europe. I would love to sit down in front of a parliament or a congress and have them grill me on why nuclear is bad. You can ask me any question they want. There's nothing off the table when it comes to nuclear. And I'm pretty confident we can respond appropriately to it. I can't, look, personally, the people that come here regularly, I can't see them lose a debate with nuclear academics and nuclear scientists when it comes to nuclear. I just can't see any of them losing the debate. And a lot of them might not say, well, not really, Dana, but no, you've never been challenged. If anybody challenges you, you'll find out how smart you actually really are. Because you're getting the best education you can get. And not every one of my presentations or shows am I the best guy, right? I got a filthy friggin' mouth sometimes. That's being pretty polite. I got a pretty potty mouth sometimes. That's from frustration. And I've done a lot of field studies and a lot of research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska after Fukushima for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean without coming home. That I'm still traumatized by that. I still have post-traumatic. I'm pretty sure that's forever. The species were exterminated. Wait, let me talk about that for a minute, maybe. You know so much the nuclear industry likes to see that material. So I went from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, where there's 27,000 islands, for 6 years. And the reason I went back year after year, is because the species to your left were missing. And so I had to go back year after year to see if the species to your left and to your right is what I found. Nothing. So there should be 600 algae. And for shellfish, there should be mussels and snails and periwinkles, which are like another type of snails. Should be oysters and scallops, multiple species of each kind, and abalones and razorback clams and little nicks and manillas. There should be all kinds of like different shapes and sizes of snails, and then the mussels should be just unbelievable amount. Like it's magic. There should be around 78 species of starfish, and each species comes in multiple vibrant colors. There's 74 species of sponges. There's incredible diversity of sea anemones, and I think it's around 76 species of sea anemones. Each species come in multiple vibrant colors. So it's a very colorful ecosystem. There's around 5,500 invertebrates without the backbones would live in the 700 algae in the tidal zones that are recognized. The 5,500 invertebrates with the backbones are like little shrimp, right? But like this is typical though, where you can't, when at low tide, you can't get to the high tide because there's so many species, you'll break your neck. It's so slippery and everything, right? You see all the species to your left. That's your typical low tide to your left. It's incredible. And so, like when I want to put up a beach line, I would wait typically till high tide. But now, and you can never put your Zodiac on a beach because it'd be full of holes from the sea urchins, the greens and the purples and the reds, and they're extinct now, right? So you can never put your Zodiac. When I was putting my Zodiac on these beaches, and I know people would say, Danny, you're supposed to flip over rocks. No, you're not, man. I was a commercial diver. The species at low tide, it was magical. It's a tropical rainforest with 27,000 islands. It was magic. That was magic. And I spent years and years and years diving that coastline. I considered that my friends, right? Those species were very special to me because I spent a very important part of my life out there. And if I didn't do that, I would never understand the things I'm doing today, right? It was incredible diversity. It really was. It was magic, right? That's the only way you can describe that coastline. It was magic to your left, and everything has gone to your right. It was wonderful. Like there are like 3,000 birds. 3,000 birds, most of them in two places close to communities, or seagulls basically. You should see around 5,000 per square mile in a healthy ocean during the migratory runs, right? Okay, I think we'll give it up tonight. I'm really burnt out, but we got a good little show in, right? James is working on a new site. I see there. So awesome, man. If you haven't subscribed to James Lucid, you'll see him in the comments section. I'll show you his site here in a second. You need to subscribe to his site. He's got an amazing collection of anti-nuclear music now that is unprecedented on the entire planet. We've never seen. He's produced, as far as I can tell, he's produced more anti-nuclear music and better anti-nuclear music than the entire planet combined. That's an amazing statement. And you know what I'm like? I don't make my statements lightly, right? This is his website. Oh, he's starting to climb up there, man. Just a matter of time before he breaks out there. And he's got an absurd amount of music. It's absurd how much music this guy got. This man got is wonderful, incredible activist who's definitely going to go down in history as the first person in history to combine AI, music, and videos, period. And he's only really just starting. You can tell by his music. Like, it's not that his music is not very good. His music's excellent. It's just his energy and his enthusiasm. And I'm going to play that Pink Hydrogen. There's the Manufacturing Nuclear Consent. Dr. Sternglass is such a great song. All of these, from Rags to Paper Suits. The atomic manhole cover. You can't keep up with it. He's got so much there, and that's what makes it so cool. He was talking about that one lost shells, because if you notice from my pictures from the research expeditions, there's no shells on the beaches anymore. The beaches are made of shells, but there's no longer shells on the beaches. And Dr. Sternglass, I'm going to play that song again because that's the only dedicated video to Dr. Sternglass, who was an incredible activist who quantified radioactive fallout and harm and death with humans way back in the day. And he disappeared from the lexicon. And that one little video that we're going to play here in a second, I'm going to do the poll first. So don't forget to vote on this poll. You still got time. I'll close the poll down after this song. Knowing Fukushima deadly nuclear fallout covered the entire planet, is nuclear dirty and not clean energy? And I tried to break that down during the show, and I hope I've done a good job. We're going to close it. I'll close the poll after I play Dr. Sternglass, because I'm really hooked on some of his songs in particular, and until I can get past that song below that, Lost Shells, that's a wonderful memory to remind us of how evil this industry actually is. I'm going to play Dr. Sternglass, and we'll see everybody. I'm not sure if I'll be back tomorrow night. I'm going to try to. Hopefully, even if I don't do a show tomorrow night, I might do a little show. Hopefully we got some videos from the Skidoos. If not, we'll see. I'm not sure. I most likely will feel better tomorrow, but I'm just ran down a little bit tonight. But I'm definitely in good spirit. We'll see everybody on the next show. Have a great night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Take care now.
Dr. Sternglass knew the risk. A silent war, invisible twist. From the fallout clouds to the gamma rays, he saw the truth in a poisoned haze. They laughed him off, they turned away, but the radiation never fades away. Dr. Sternglass, can you hear us now? We ignored the warnings, don't know how. We breathe it in, it's in the breeze. The slow decay brings us to our knees. In the quiet towns where secrets seep, the silent burn beneath our feet. Sternglass warned as the world moved on, but in the ground the danger's drawn. The truth he spoke, buried deep, as fallout spreads while the children sleeps away. Dr. Sternglass, can you hear us now? We ignored the warnings, don't know how. We breathe it in, it's in the breeze. The slow decay brings us to our knees. From Chernobyl's dust to Fukushima's tide, he showed the path where sickness hides. The rivers glow, the soil turned black, but the suits keep pushing, won't look back. The numbers grow, the cancer spreads, the media shrugs, the science dead. You can't feel it, can't see the burn, but Sternglass knew it's our turn. Radiation crawling through the land, while they cash in with bloodstained hands. It's in the rain, it's in the sea, it's creeping slow, too blind to see. They sealed the leaks, but it's too late. The winds have carried our poisoned fate. Babies born to a world unknown, toxic dust in the blood and bone. You told the truth, but no one stayed.